Hello, I'm back with another eyeshadow palette video. Oden's Eye Christmas collection. It finally did arrive in the mail earlier this week. So I think to start, I really want to test out this shade down here. It looks very blue in the camera, but in my view it looks very, well, purple in the camera, but it can turn very, very blue, really pretty. So I definitely want to give this a go. I'm going to start off with the shade Nowhere. It has a really pretty snowflake embossing on it as well. This is going to be kind of my base shade. I did use the Makeup Revolution Prime and Lock and it's not set, so I am going to kind of start by packing the shadow on and use this shadow to kind of set the base a little bit. Whenever I have unset primer, it's completely normal to like get some eyeshadow kind of stubbornness where it doesn't want to blend because it's sticking down to the primer, especially if it's tacky like Prime and Lock is. But I know that, so that's why I'm kind of just going to pack it on first. It's just a very desaturated gray, but it does have a hint of brown to it, so it's not completely like dead looking. And I'm just gonna stipple it out, not swiping or anything. And I'm not like super concerned about the blending because I will kind of refine it later. This is just a base shade. Okay, so I've laid that down, so now I do want to go in with a darker shade. So I really want to try pairing the shimmer shade. I'm going to pair it with this shade up here. It looks really pretty. So we're going to go for a blue look. This shade is called Christmas Eve, really cute. This reminds me of the matte from Celestial Nirvana. That matte was actually not half bad, so we'll see how this measures up. Now obviously this palette was a little bit cheaper. This was like about $44 to $45 US. It does build up quite nicely. I am actually getting quite a deep shade as I pack it. I know in the past I had issues with building Oden's eye mattes up to be true to pan, but I am getting a pretty nice depth out of this shade. I am using a denser synthetic brush right now. Earlier I was just using a blending brush to lay the shade down, but then I wanted to switch to packing. This is just a Spectrum brush. Again, I do really like Spectrum brushes, and I'm just using very tiny gentle stippling motions to blend the shadow out, and I kind of want it to go further into my eyelid. I'm also going to start working this shade on the lower lash line. This brush is a little bit fat for that, so I am going to switch to a kind of pointier brush so that I can get the darker shade closer to my lash line. So far, very little fallout. Again, I am using a tackier primer base, so that does help too. Yeah, you can see I'm able to push the pigment closer up to my actual lower lash line. That dark blue actually blended really well, especially on top of the gray base that I laid down. Okay, so I do want to continue to add a little bit of depth before I use that main metallic. So this is one of the formulas I tend to feel kind of conflicted about. The really dark shimmers. They tend to have a lot of fallout and they can be really difficult to work with. It's called Blue Star. This does have some base to it, so again I'm just going to use this on the outer part of the eyelid. We're like kind of making a transition to that point shimmer. It is pretty. Like, I do like the effect it gives when done well because it does truly look like a night sky. And then let me just use my finger to try and tap it out a little bit. So you can see as I turn my head, the reflect really starts to show through, but from the front it just looks like I've added more darkness to my eyelid. So that's why you do have to be kind of careful with the placement of these. Trying to avoid fallout. Matcha! Okay, so now it's time for the main shadow, which is going to be called Gorgeous, and it is very pretty. Feels very creamy. It provides a really interesting contrast because of the fact that there's orange shifts in it. Alright, I'm going to take the shade Wonderful. I'm going to take that on the lower lash line. Really pretty lavender. Okay, and then I am going to try and use a brush to intensify Gorgeous a little bit more in the inner corner. I I love how on my brush it looks blue, but then when I put it on my eyes, it just immediately turns orange. Okay, so this is going to be the first look completed. It is actually a surprisingly not blue look despite using a whole lot of blue shadow. I actually really like it. Before I finish it up though, let me just do one more thing. I do think I need to blend a little bit more. So I'm going to take a little bit more of Nowhere, which is that first shade I used, and I'm just going to touch up the edge. I do think I need to try and like kind of add a more even layer of this loose star. See, this is why I always kind of end up having troubles with these kinds of shades, because I find it's really difficult to get an even layer of application. They always end up looking kind of patchy. Especially because, as you can see, it's got such a dark base that if it's uneven in the spots where it's patchy, the base shows through, and the base is very dark blue, but it also, when you blend it, it turns kind of gray. So that was kind of the problem I felt like I ran into with that shade. So I'm not saying it's bad. I feel like this kind of shade is just inherently not super easy to use. So with that being said, I'm gonna finish off this look, some lashes, rest of my makeup, and we'll be back. I'll regroup, and then we'll move on to look number 2. Okay, so this is gonna be my finished look. I still feel like the top of my eyeshadow looks a little like rough around the edges, like it wasn't completely blended, especially using this shade on the bottom lashes. It's hard to kind of see now that I've zoomed out, but I feel like it's so hard to get these kinds of really dark shimmers with the dark base to apply evenly, because any minute mistakes made are going to really show up and be super obvious. So I did want to really lean into the coolness of this look, so it's kind of subtle. It's a little hard to see on camera. I did use the Peiliee blush in 14 Pastel Lavender. This is one of the collabs that they had with, like, it's got like the cute little mascot embossing. As you can see, it's a really nice pastel lavender. This is one of the more pigmented lavender blushes I've tried, so I just applied it pretty densely. And then to kind of connect the blush to the contour in a more natural manner, because otherwise it looked strangely ashy, I did use this Strawberry Rococo blush in 04 Dream Chaser. Been using this a lot recently. I used it mostly right around here. Again, it's really not easy to see, but it was more of like a blending transitional color for me, so it's not really meant to be seen. For highlight, I did use the Aria from Flower Nose. It's going to be this highlighter here. It looks super white, but it does have a slight blue shift, so it's just a little bit more of like a subtle blue, but it's definitely super white, so I don't use it as often as I use Revelations, but when I do, it is really pretty. I line my lips with the Roman Dewy Full Water tint in the shade Berry Divine. As you can see, a very cool pinky red. I feel like this lip definitely made the look. So this is going to be look number 1 complete, and we're going to move on to the second look. Hopefully this video isn't too long. I'll see you in a couple seconds, and I'll work on the second look tomorrow. Alright, time to do look number 2. Now, literally the day that I'm filming this, Oden's Eye posted an update saying sold out, and a lot of people are really upset. I'm so very sorry. I do wish Oden's Eye had faster shipping options. It's very frustrating that, like, people like me, that we get it so late that we can't really help you guys make decisions at this point. So the only real way you guys have to get information is from people who get it in PR, and I know Oden's Eye and Kaleidos are kind of known for kicking people off their PR list if they're not positive enough. So if you guys are just watching this video to see what you can dupe from your own collection to get the same looks that I'm creating, then I hope this helps you as well. So for today's look, I'm really feeling like I want to fuss around with the silver as kind of the point shade, and I did change my eye primer. I switched back to the Rare Beauty eye primer. It's a little less tacky than the Makeup Revolution one. I really want to start off with, I actually want to use this shade as the base because it's such a pretty taupe. I want to see if I can pull this off. So it does pick up really well on a brush. This taupe shade is called Silvery Dream. It's a little bit more on the sparkly side, so I don't think I can use a brush for this because I'm going to get a ton of fallout. This might not be a great choice for a base shade though, because it does have so much reflect. It's not really getting like dark. I will say the texture of this, it's so thick that with me piling it on my eyelid, I can feel it when I blink. I should have used a tackier primer today. Okay, so I'm just going to attempt to apply this as a base shade. It turns out that it's actually a lot more sparkly reflective, and it doesn't quite have as much base pigment as I thought it would looking at it in the pan. Make do with what we've got, and I will use a matte on top of this to add the depth I want. So I'm going to go into Nightfall, which is that really pretty blue, and I'm going to use that to start adding some color. The nice thing is that I can layer mattes on top of this. I'm probably gonna have to change track. This is not gonna turn out the way I thought it would just because the shimmer is not what I thought it would be. That's okay, I'll salvage it. We'll figure something out. Let me just first get this shadow placed. This is what happens when you don't like swatch beforehand or anything. I like going in kind of blind. I like surprising myself apparently, so we'll figure it out. Okay, so I am gonna go ahead and add depth using Night Sky. I used Christmas Eve for the first look, but the Night Sky down here I haven't used yet. This has got a little more green, so it's going to read as more teal compared to this, which is just a very dark blue. And I'm going to have this shade be my depth adding shade. So this look is also going to go a little bit blue, but hopefully I can get it to look different enough from the first look by virtue of using different metallics. So forgive me in advance. And I'm just going to tap it on so as not to generate too much fallout for myself. You can see though that I am able to layer the matte on top with some success, so I can troubleshoot like that, which is pretty nice. I'm just gonna kind of create a nice wing shape with the blue, and then I'm going to start working on the lower lash line. I will say that blue is the teal that I'm using. It's giving a little bit of fallout, so encourage tapping off the excess to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. I'm sorry if I seem a little zoned out. It's Wednesday night when I'm filming this, so it's just been so hard for me to focus all day. And to top it all off, as if I didn't have enough to worry about, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have gone wild on the internet. I've been looking. I'm that kind of person, so I allegedly may or may not be wondering where the ROM is. I'm going to use a smaller brush to build up the lower lash line, see if I can avoid that fallout situation I gave myself on the right eye. Okay, so I think we're salvaging it. I think this is gonna come together all right in the end. I was legitimately hoping that I would have the time to upload this before the pre-order ended, so I am very, very sorry. If I ever have such urgent palettes arrive again, I may in the future consider doing multiple looks in a day. Get it up sooner, but I can only do so much. Okay, so I kind of built the blue up and over a little bit, so it kind of helps to add some structure to the look, so it's almost cut creasy, but not really. I am going to take this blue and kind of blend out the lower lash line just a little bit. There are some stray sparkles getting all over my lower lash line from this brush, so whatever. Okay, so this is what we are looking like so far. There is a lot of glitter fallout from that first shade. That was definitely on me for thinking I could use it as a base shadow. If I had literally just taken the time to swatch the palette, I would have known. However, I think you can understand, because looking at this pan, it clearly looks like such a pretty taupe shadow, but it's actually kind of more of a translucent shade. Joke's on me, but that's okay, we'll move on. I'm now gonna take that shade Snowflake, and I think this will be fun to use. So I am gonna go ahead and use my finger. I can definitely tell at first glance this is a very chunky textured shade. I could tell just looking at the pan. And this is gonna also go in the inner corner. I'm gonna kind of wrap it up and around the eyelid like this. Yeah, that's really pretty. And then I'm gonna use my other finger and kind of go back over with the first shade, that taupier sparkle shade, to make sure that they're blended. Now both of these shades are textured enough that when I blink I can kind of feel them. It's not enough to bother me, but if you have really, really sensitive eyes, it may be enough to bother you. I also feel like as I blink I can see some chunks falling down, so again, just more things to kind of be wary of with the longevity of these shadows. If you don't want glitter falling on your face throughout the day, you may well want to consider using glitter glue. Yeah, it is really, really pretty though, I will say. So here these shades are finger applied, dry, no glitter glue, so you can see how they perform that way. These are very chunky shadows. They're beautiful, but I can totally see them causing fallout issues if you don't spray your brush or whatever. Now for the lower lash line, I'm going to take Silvery Dream and I am going to spray my brush. So I'm using a dampened brush and I'm going to apply it on the middle And as you can see, it does kind of stick better and go on more precisely with a dampened brush. Otherwise, I definitely would have been seeing a lot of fallout. That is really pretty. I do like that a lot. Okay, and then I'm going to go into, I do want to use Snow Light on the inner corners just for some like kind of, just for a spot of contrast. So you can see it just has a little kind of flash of gold. And then do you see how I have these kind of gaps here? I'm going to put a shimmer there. So I'm going to take Snow Light again and I'm going to just stick it right there in the gap. Just adds a really, like, it's not visible from the front, but as I turn my head, it becomes visible and then it looks really cool. So this is gonna be my finished look. It actually didn't take me that long to put together. I do really like it. I do like the beautiful textures I've got going on, but I will say for the third look, I'm definitely going to employ the use of a glitter glue, and that should help dramatically with how this turned out. My blending could have been a lot better, but putting mattes on top of shimmers, it's difficult even on a good day. I will say the matte formula in this palette so far has proven to be really great to work with. I do like to see that for Oden's Eye, they're leaning more into their sparklier formula now, because their normal smoother shimmers can feel a little bit thin without much substance to them. Like they just don't really stand out much, and so I do really like that they're doing more sparkly stuff because that's what they do better. But I will say these are really loosely pressed compared to their other palettes. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this look and then I'll come back and regroup. This is going to be the finished look. I do really like how it all turned out. I know my lip color is probably gonna like be like the exact same freaking thing for all three looks, but I'm not good at matching my lip color to my makeup. What can I say? I feel like I'm getting better, but it's a process. I'm definitely having a lot of fun pulling out all the cool colors in my complexion collection to fiddle with, considering that I just really got into cool tones like this year, and I've just been having so much fun learning how to wear them in a way that's flattering for me. So I'll quickly go over what's on my face. So for blush, I started off with the base shade of the Dior blush in pink. This is the one that like went super viral and it took a while for me to get my hands on it. Been really enjoying it. And then for the center of my face, I brightened it up by mixing these two shades together from this 2 AM blush. I actually really like it. It is actually super pigmented, so it does actually like have a visible brightening effect on the center of my face. For highlighter, I used Becca Pearl. It's not a shade you can get anymore, but as you can see, any bright, really cool toned highlighter will do. So in my case, about the only thing I have really is just this like really bright white highlighter. And as you can see, compared to like the highlighters that I have these days, Becca definitely kind of starts to feel a little bit outdated, but it still has a really pretty glow on the skin. One thing about Becca that is super cool is that even if it doesn't seem as shiny as highlighters that come out these days, Becca never emphasizes my skin texture, so it doesn't matter what kind of bumps I've got. I've actually got a whole network of bumps right here on this strip of skin, but as you can see, my Becca highlighter will not emphasize any of that. That's kind of the magic of these. I lined my lips and I used the NYX, this is Milky Gloss and Mixed Berry Shake. I love the smell on these. They smell so fruity. And as you can see, it's this nice berry shade. It looks very similar to the shade I wore in the first look, but it is slightly different and it's definitely a different finish. Not as sticky as the as some of NYX's other gloss formulas, but it's definitely way stickier than Romand. The Romand Dewy Full Tint does kind of eventually have a dry down to it. This does not. Obviously, it's going to transfer everywhere, but it is really pretty. And then lastly, I did just forget to mention, I did put a little bit of the Nabla Cupid's Arrow in the shade 5 on the outer half of my waterline, just so that the pink of my waterline wouldn't disrupt the look. So you can see that darkness really helps to tone down my waterline and make it so you can really focus on the eyeshadow. Long discussion aside, I hope you guys are enjoying this. I'm going to use as many shades as I can for the third look. I hope this is inspiring you so far. So I'll sign off now and you guys will see the third look in a couple seconds. Okay, so we're back. We're gonna do a third and final look. So for the last look, I really want to focus on using the green here, the green here. I'm gonna see which shimmers I can incorporate. Also, I'm gonna use the yellow here to kind of blend everything out, warm up the look. I just watched Nikki Tutorial's reveal of the Nimya palette. Very exciting. I saw her do an eyeshadow technique that I generally don't do on myself, but then I saw the way she structured the shimmers around it and I thought to myself, it's worth at least trying. So we're gonna try that for this third look. It could go really well, it could go really terrible, but I definitely want to try it. I have mad respect for her makeup skills. I know her videos are super filtered, but the eyeshadow application, the artistry, the color picking and stuff like that, she is definitely a very highly skilled artist. There is no doubt about that. I did use a different eyeshadow primer today to see if I can increase the blendability of these shades, and I'm going to go ahead and start this shade on the very inside part of my eyelid. This is usually an area I completely avoid putting any shadow in because I feel like it pushes my eyes even closer together, but I do want to kind of try her technique with the shimmer placement, and for that I'm gonna have to put the eyeshadow pretty much right against the bridge of my nose. She said she likes to do this because it makes her nose look thinner. At the very least for me it'll make the bridge of my nose look higher, so yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely a little nervous, but I'm just gonna go in. So I'm using a Rephr 13. That'll give me the precision I need to press the eyeshadow in right where I need it. So this is gonna be a look structure I have not done in a very long time because I kind of convinced myself it just wasn't for me, but watching her video emboldened me to try, because it's not that her eyes are close together, but they're not super far apart either, so I figure if she can pull this off. I mean, my eyes are kind of close together, but they're not like super close together, so I feel like it's at least worth a try. Okay, so as you can see, I laid that down, so I'm gonna switch brushes. I'm going to switch over to this Worker 1. Honestly, this isn't my favorite Sonia G brush I've ever purchased. I mean, this is just too big, but I'm going to go into this shade here. It's called Softly. Ooh, that's okay. So you can see Softly. Definitely, this shade doesn't need much building at all. So I'm going to let this work on across my eyelid. I put down a little more than I expected, but that is completely fine, honestly. And then I'm going to start moving and manipulating the pigment up. So that is where Nikki Tutorials' crease would be. Obviously, I don't have her structure. I'm going to take a baby blender and I'm going to start kind of working on carefully creating a better gradient. I'm getting I got a little bit of fallout with the initial laydown of that shade. I should have tapped off, but I completely forgot to, so oops. I definitely think Oden's eye mattes have become kind of more powdery as time has gone on, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I know I used to have a really hard time working with them, but they've come a long way. Okay, so as you can see, I was able to get a pretty good blend. It's not bad, and it's actually surprisingly dark on my eyelid once I build it up. I'm not going to repeat that mistake. So this time I'm going to go lightly into the pan and stamp carefully on my eye, and I'm going to build the pigment up. Okay, so I do have some kind of, it's sticking more and not really blending at the top, but because I'm going to be using the Tarte shade later to blend it all out, I'm not really going to worry about it for now because like matte eyeshadow, it's not going to like set, it's not going to fix. I have plenty of time to fix it later. And I'm going to take the green on, I'm going to take that green back on the lower lash line. Okay, and then I haven't used the Ice Crystal shade yet. I'm gonna go ahead and use Ice Crystal on the front part. I haven't really had a chance to fit this shade in just because it's like a straight up gray, and honestly I don't really think I'm going to. This isn't really a shade I'm going to use much anyways. I just don't use gray shades like this often because they look so bad on my skin tone. And then I'm going to take a Rephr 02. It's a really nice packing brush, and I'm going to go ahead and take that Tarte shade. It has a cute little snowflake imprint on it, super cute. And I'm going to kind of just stick this in the front part of my eye. It's acting like it has a sheen. So I don't see any shimmer particles in it at all, but upon putting it on my eyelid, it's slightly shiny. Well, that's really pretty actually. I'll go ahead and just kind of stick this all over my lid then. Yeah, it's definitely not matte, but I will say looking at it in the pan, I hardly can pick up the sheen. This is like a true satin right here. Well, that's actually really pretty. That totally surprised me. I wasn't expecting that at all because I'm mostly going into this blind, but I love it. And I actually, now that I think about it, it does make sense because pastel yellows have a habit of getting really dusty and just completely blending away. Making it a satin like this really gives it a lot more pigment power to it, and it actually like is adhering to my eyelid and you can see it and it's not blending away. And then I'm just going to start working on blending the top. Okay, so I'm not going to use this shade to blend out the look then because that would totally not work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a nice fluffy brush and I'm going to use Ice Crystal to blend out the tops, and that may actually work out better. And I can also kind of sheer it out so it looks closer to my skin tone. Yeah, and Ice Crystal is completely matte, so. Okay, so I actually don't mind putting the eyeshadow so close to my nose bridge at all. I don't necessarily think it made my nose bridge look thinner, but I don't also have a thinner nose bridge to begin with like she does. So if I put the eyeshadow too close to my nose bridge, it's going to start to look strange since I do kind of have that wider nose bridge. I do think it's interesting. I do feel like I probably could have like pulled the eyeshadow out further. Maybe that might have helped. The look is almost wrapped up at this point, so I'm not going to pull it out much further because then that's a lot of re-blending I have to do, which I don't necessarily want to right now. But I'm going to go ahead and take Feeling Time, which is feeling more like that standard smooth metallic, so I'm not going to use a glitter glue. And I'm going to put it right here, kind of transitioning these two shades. And I'm trying to avoid going up into the green. Okay, it's not really coming off my finger. It's like sticking to my, it's sticking aggressively to my finger. See if I can get it to apply on better with a brush. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit better. And like I've said, I feel like this formula of Oden's eye, it's not like the best on the market and it's not like super blowing my socks off, but it is pretty solid. I do wish it worked better with a finger. Maybe I just didn't pick up enough, so I'm gonna swirl in a little harder in the pan and see if that means more will come off now. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, I baby my eyeshadow palettes. I don't want to make them look gross, and I don't want to like press too hard into them. That is gorgeous. I do really like that. Okay, so now I'm going to take Blue Ice, and I think that actually might look really interesting mixed with the satin yellow on my inner corner. I got a little bit of fallout too, so yeah, it feels kind of like that smoothish formula as well. I'm gonna use a Rephr 03. Yeah, I got a little bit of fallout with that shade. On the finger, it felt more like a smooth metallic, but it also kind of is a little glittery, so this shade kind of feels like it's a kind of a midpoint between the two formulas in this palette. Back over it with the yellow. I think that's a really interesting color contrast, and it also gives me a way to use almost all the shades in this palette. Okay, so that is the blue, and I think my angle should have been kind of more like sloped out away from my eyelid. I just find that when I try and do that kind of angle, it just looks so weird because of the shape of my eye just isn't conducive to that, but I will mess around with it. But I actually really like how this turned out. I totally thought that the eyeshadow here was gonna ruin everything, but actually, yeah, this went a lot better than I thought it would. So lastly, I am going to go ahead and I really want to use some glitter glue and see how Snow Light performs with glitter glue. And I just used my fingernail to dab it on. I'm just gonna stick it on top of that glitter glue. And I'm gonna also let it trail lower. I really like how that looks on me right now. Yeah, it looks way better on glitter glue. It also kind of melts together on glitter glue as well. And then lastly, I feel like I just didn't give Wonderful enough of a chance because Wonderful is such a beautiful shade. I'm gonna use Wonderful and I'm gonna use glitter glue for this. Have a little dab of glitter glue. I'm just gonna put it on the back of my hand and I'm gonna use some kind of brush. And I'm gonna map out where I want it to go. Okay, so now I'm gonna take Wonderful and hopefully I have a better, easier time getting it to stay where I want it to. Obviously, this would also be a lot easier if you, say, had like wet your brush or something, or Duraline could also help. I'm gonna do this the hard way because I hate myself apparently. I mean, it's working. Okay, it's not like perfectly symmetrical, but that's okay. So I'm going to kind of call this the look, and so I'm going to finish off this look with some lashes and I'll be back and we can discuss kind of my takeaways from this palette. Okay, so here's my finished look. I actually am surprised it turned out looking a lot better than I thought it would. Also, my contact lens is bothering me, so if this eye starts watering or turning red, it's not the eyeshadow, it is the contact lens. It just happens to me sometimes. So I'm just gonna quickly go over the palette, and I think because of the variety and the formulas, this video is gonna be long because I'm going to end this video by going shade by shade really quickly. So there are a couple different formulas in this palette, so I'm gonna quickly go over them. So this shade here, this is one of the chunky, glittery like metallics, very loosely pressed in pan. Glitter glue highly recommended. This matte, as far as I can tell, is really great. Gray does not look the best on my skin tone, but it blended out really easily. this shade is the same, and it actually is, it looks really dark in the pan, but it's actually more of a translucent kind of sparkle shade. Again, if you look and look too, you'll see it would really benefit from a glitter glue. Super chunky but really pretty. This shade, the mattes are all really great. So this is a matte. Love it. This is a good matte too. I noticed this one you have to build a little bit. This is going to be the same as this shade up here. This is in fact I think this is one of the chunkiest shades in this palette. It is really, really beautiful. I think this one, a glitter glue, is going to be pretty much non-negotiable, honestly. This shade, this matte blue, surprised me. Really great. Love it. This is kind of like, it's in between the foiled smooth and the chunky glitter. So it almost kind of came across as kind of crumbly, kind of plain. Not my favorite shade in this palette. Kind of one of the more boring ones. Almost kind of like the Pat McGrath light blue one, except at least it's a little bit shinier. I was kind of disappointed by this. This is a smooth foiled shimmer. It's not the most foiled indie shimmer I've seen on the market, but it's definitely not bad. I just find this particular formula from Oden's Eye to be the least exciting to me. Really great, performed well. I think this one I had to build up a little bit, but it was fine other than that. This one is going to be kind of similar to this one, but it's a lot sparklier, and it being lavender makes it a little bit more unique, so I'm willing to forgive it. Yeah, I do really like this one a lot more than this one, just because of the fact that it's lavender, but I think this is the same formula as this. It felt the same to me. This is an amazing shade. I had no problems with this. I was like blown away. This was a good performing matte. This is a satin yellow, and it's a satin pastel yellow, and I think making it a satin was actually a genius decision on their part. As you saw in the third look, it performed really well. Most pastel yellows have issues with blending away. This being satin, I think, is what made it stick down and be opaque and be seen. This is the multi-chrome, but it honestly really bored me. It's very thin, not very impactful, doesn't have much oomph behind it. So if you want to get this palette because of the multi-chrome, honestly, it's fine that you missed it. Go ahead and get a single from Terra Moons. I was not super blown away by this. However, I will say, when I wore this look, I was asking one of my friends what he thought of it and what colors he could see, and he saw way more colors on it than I saw in the camera and that you will see. So I mostly saw like the pink and the orange, but he actually did see a lot of blue, pink, and purple. So just bear in mind with multi-chromes, what people see on your eyelid is going to be different than what you see. So if it looks boring on you, I bet all your friends and family will see it on all its splendor, which is kind of like the blessing and the curse of multi-chromes. But either way, kind of one of the weaker multi-chromes I've tried in my collection, but it being in the palette does make it technically like kind of on the more affordable end. Make with that information what you will. This matte, again, kind of like this one, blew me away. Stunning performance, loved it. This being so chunky with such a dark base, as I have kind of elaborated upon earlier, it's very difficult to use. It's extremely unforgiving. Any sort of uneven application, it's going to show up very patchy and it's going to be super obvious. Be very careful as you use this. The result is absolutely beautiful. It's like stars, but I find any brand making this kind of formula, always it ends up being a real struggle to get it to look good on the eyelid. So don't over blend or else the base will show through and it'll turn really gray, and just generally handle with care. And that's going to be it for me on this palette. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. Again, I am so sorry that this is not going to be able to help anyone make a purchasing decision. As far as I can tell, these palettes are not being restocked, so they are no longer available. But maybe these looks gave you some inspiration. Maybe you can use this video to see if you can dupe the vibes, find similar shades in your collection. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and I will be back very soon with the counterpart palette to this collection. Do stick around. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!